head of academic and commercial collaboration at Huawei, and so I'm not here in that capacity though. I have 5 issued patents. I worked for Microsoft for 15 years in crypto and security, and so I'm here in that capacity. I'm very interested in blockchain and cryptocurrency space, and I have some opinions. And I'm short. I'm one of the short panels.
Hi, my name is Jake Sade. I'm currently a venture investor. Got involved in blockchain early on with a company called Civic, but also involved in a couple other companies that haven't gone public yet with what they're doing in blockchain, but seeing a lot of activity specifically focused on B2B applications. Prior to doing what I'm doing now, I was president of a company called 10X. We built the largest online marketplace for real estate transactions. Grew to $10 billion a year in online transactions during my time there. Sold the company last year, and before that I was at Lightspeed Venture Partners for a while.
My name is Sanjeet Dang. I'm an investment director at Intel Capital. Intel Capital, for those of you who are not familiar with it, we are the venture capital arm of Intel Corporation. Probably one of the most prolific VCs out there, not just corporate VCs. We invest roughly $500 million every year in startups, and we tend to lead most of the deals. We have been investing in blockchain and cryptocurrency. There's more blockchain space, and our interest always is to find applications, technology, use cases of blockchain, not just in the crypto world, but beyond that as well in enterprise space. And I'll talk more about that.
Good morning. So I'm Vlad Trifa. I lead the product and engineering at Ambrosus. We're based in Switzerland, in Zurich, so I'm going to treat here and see what's happening. We basically build a complete ecosystem that is combining blockchain and Internet of Things to do supply chain traceability, focusing specifically in pharma, food, and commodities trading. Our idea is to use, for example, smart contracts to digitalize some parts of the processes, how you work with your suppliers, how you do the shipment, but also trace and guarantee using blockchain that transport conditions, for example, were exceeded. So we focus mostly on anti-counterfeiting, that's one of the part. Second is like all the regulation and compliance, which is particularly important for pharma. And then if we can, because you are collecting all that data, you can start thinking about supply chain optimization in real time, using sensors, using location, using the status of your products. And it's fully open source. We've done our token sale a few months ago, and we're building the stuff now. And we released an alpha version 2 days ago, by the way.
Congrats. Good morning, my name is Jeremy Allman. I'm the CEO of a company called Paystand. Paystand is a B2B payment network, so you can imagine what PayPal or Venmo does between consumers. We do for large commercial transactions between accounts receivable and accounts payable departments. We've used blockchain technology for about 3.5 years now, so we've been in market primarily to take a finance department's cash flow, speed up their time to cash, automate their business process, and radically lower their cost to receive capital. We are probably somewhat unique in the blockchain space because we are not a token sale company, even though we use blockchain tech, but we are a traditional venture-backed company.
Jorge David Mendez with Caper Capital. We're a seed stage, pre-seed, sometimes Series A fund that we're social impact based, so we look for companies that close gaps of access or expand opportunity for low-income Americans, and sometimes outside of the U.S. We've been exploring blockchain as a means of creating more equitable sort of society and products and efficacious systems.
My name is Island Lover. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Koala. We started 2 years ago and have been building quietly a protocol coin that is a stable coin. It's totally decentralized. That is, it's not asset-backed. The goal, and the reason we're doing this, is because we want to help facilitate the mass adoption of cryptocurrency. We think that's what's needed next for the entire industry to grow. And we saw a few key obstacles to that. The first one, as I mentioned, is the stability. We need a stable coin to conduct business, for consumers to conduct their lives using cryptocurrency. But there are also some performance issues that we're addressing as well. So we are a fork of the Ethereum code base, and we have substituted in the Tendermint consensus protocol and modified that slightly. So we are a separate blockchain that is at this moment in time in testnet, and I'm happy to say super fast. So we're talking about enterprise level transaction throughput. So we're very excited about that. The final piece of what we think we can contribute to this industry is really to provide the stability that other projects need, the speed that other projects need, and then an open environment, right? So that we can help to support others in any way we can to thrive in this particular industry. So that's what we're all about.
Thanks, it's perfect. I think it's a good segue into kind of the first thematic question here. A lot of you obviously represented a number of different enterprise chains, supply chain management, distributed computing, golems, and we'd like to hear from you. One, what are the top 3 opportunities, but somewhat to your point on kind of what are some of the challenges you're facing, whether that's scalability, choosing chains, and what are the type of options that are available to some of our entrepreneurs, whether that's looking at Tendermint, Cosmos, Polkadot. What are the type of things that can help mitigate some of those challenges? And happy to start with anybody who's ready to volunteer.
All right. One of the challenges, obviously, that's what we were discussing before, is the pricing. When you're shifting and you're starting selling B2B that is based on cryptocurrencies, there is a lot of education going on. And when you're talking about the pricing, you can't just go to a customer and say, oh, your bill is going to be between 10 and 100 grand depending on the market. That's not something they want to hear. So you need to find a way where you can predict the costs. You can at least give an upper floor of how that costs. The price to be kind of predictable basically in dollars. So that's one of the challenges we're facing. The other is obviously the speed and performance. Depending on where you're using those things for, if you use them on the production line and you really need to have super fast response time, then that puts strong constraints on what blockchain technology you're using. If you're using that for other things where a few seconds or a few minutes of delays are totally fine, like reimbursement of medical bills, you can wait a few more minutes as opposed to a couple of months doctors have to wait. Those things will influence. So I think really response times and how fast before you know that something is going to place there, and the availability of price. But I'm sure there are many other challenges that one can share.
Well, given we're sitting in Wilson Sonsini, I think the thing that I run into quite often is the dynamic regulatory environment. Especially for U.S. companies who want U.S. investors, literally it seems like day by day, week by week, you're looking for, what came out, and then hoping something came out doesn't affect something you did, 2 weeks before, 2 months before. So I think that's a key challenge. And certainly one of the things that companies are doing to help mitigate risk, especially the securities issue, is saying, okay, how can we, kind of build our product and get our product into the hands of network participants, and even just sell to our network participants. But again, in the B2B space, one of the challenges is the network participants are traditional companies. They're trying to get their head around what this is and what it means. And even if they, you got to the point of discussion around price, usually the discussion stops way before that, and that people are like, hey, I don't know if I can get my CFO to buy into this because he's not sure what it's about. So these little chicken and eggs that are happening, again, U.S. companies for U.S. investors, where I'm focused, has been a key challenge.
Yeah. Maybe to add to that, I think one of the things that we're in maybe an inflection point is a lot of the work, particularly on the enterprise side, has been at the infrastructure layer of blockchain for quite some time. And I think one of the things that we're starting to see a transition around is really for this to see massive adoption of the enterprise layer is what does it look like at the application layer. We sell to CFOs pretty much all day long, and the conversation with them is not really about infrastructure or scaling or these other things. It's how does this improve their business operations, and so I think that's one of the areas our industry in blockchain is starting to evolve into. I'll give you some examples. For our customers, what really matters is that they don't necessarily care that it's blockchain. Okay, what they care about is we have an accounts payable product. One of the ways we use blockchain is for signing. So when somebody signs off an approval workflow, there's a clear provenance of record of transactions on where the money went, how it went. There's an audit trail around it. Can it be reconciled? What systems did it go into? That just means that the enterprise's systems are more secure, their money moved faster, maybe in some kind of lower cost way where it was a paper-based product before. So really it comes down to what value did you create, how did you change their life, how did you improve the business? And I think a blockchain has the ability to do that, but we don't often speak in that language right now. So I think that's one of the transitions that needs to happen to sort of reach the mainstream.
I would agree with a number of comments that have been made. Certainly the overall maturity of the market. Certainly these are not new technologies. There's technologies that have been around for a long time and they've been proven out time and time again. The issue is the solutions that are built with those technologies, the cost of operation of those solutions. In the past, if a company needed a distributed ledger, they created a distributed database and they operated that as an individual service within their own company. So the distribution, having actors inside of that network that have different motives, and constraining the solution so that the different actors cannot inject additional risk into the overall infrastructure for running that service. That's a really big concern, and you have that playing out in a lot of different ways. You have the FBI issuing subpoenas for ICOs. You have people hacking exchanges, right, and people losing massive amounts of value. And then you have other situations where the use of the currency, right, is basically in direct opposition to policing strategy, to law enforcement, the anonymity that is injected with cryptocurrencies and using the blockchain. Those types of services, they're appealing to a lot of people. Some of those people are bad actors, right? And so you have different reactions from political establishments that have spent decades, and in some cases more than decades, right, tooling their policing activities based on follow the money, right? And so it's very interesting time.
And it's interesting you say that because with certain cryptocurrencies, Monero, Zcash, those type of anonymity is kind of inherent to the protocol. But at the same time, I think there's strong arguments, especially in kind of more oppressive regimes or more oppressive environments, where there's kind of a legitimate basis for that. And so I'm curious, as we face kind of these type of challenges, especially to Jake's point, as we try to fit these into a regulatory framework while still allowing us to flourish. How do you see the industry interacting with regulators? And I see that it's kind of interesting to me in that you mentioned the subpoenas that went out all of yesterday, and even now it's still somewhat difficult. There is not as much information sharing between teams. Part of that is because people are worried about the value on their token value or the perceived value on the enterprise. But it seems that there is sometimes a lack of working groups within the space where people are sharing this information and best practices. So I'm curious as to your opinions as to how people can help facilitate fitting within a framework while not undermining things like the value that Monero or Zcash gives to people who could really rely on the anonymity, not for illicit activities, but for some type of value protection.
So ultimately, these communities are self-policing, right? Just like good open source projects, these communities are self-policing. If you see people that are doing things that are questionable, or if you hear about things within the project that are going to introduce problems for the project, then ultimately the project, the participants in the project that are actually interested in it continuing, right? This could be a currency, for example. Those actors they identify the bad actors themselves, right? And they police those activities. It's when they inherently cannot do that you wind up with regulation. And there's always a balance, right? So the most ridiculous thing that I heard recently was FBI saying, maybe we need to issue a token, right? We need visibility into the transactions that are associated with these cryptocurrency activities. Maybe we should issue our own token so that we have visibility into what's going on, right? So, this is a pendulum. It swings one way, it swings the other. With fiat currencies, certainly the amount of regulation that we have has become onerous, right? And the activities that are involved in those activities have become difficult. And so when cryptocurrencies are proposed as a complete opposite in a lot of respects, it looks a lot like, wow, I should rush over here. But then when people realize that there is no regulatory infrastructure, there is no FDIC, there is no SIPC, you're basically creating a transaction that you cannot recover from in the case that you're hacked, right? In the case that your exchange is hacked. And so, when people begin to realize that, they start seeing that risk, then the pendulum will swing back, and you'll have some natural oscillation, and then eventually you'll wind up with some regulatory framework that works most of the time, right? But that'll take decades. The opportunity, as my koala friend had introduced, right, was we have an opportunity to avoid mistakes of the past, and we have an opportunity to do this faster than it has happened in the past with fiat currencies. The issue is that all of these high fluctuations, these volatilities inherent in the cryptocurrency market, they have to become stabilized at some point. And while I'm not 100% sure that in essence of trailing tax is the way to do that, I think that it's a good opportunity to introduce some stability into that market. And so this is a gigantic laboratory, and we're all scientists. We have an opportunity to try out new things, learn from the mistakes of the past, and we can learn from the solutions of the past, and we can in fact do it faster. And that's both the blessing and the curse of cryptocurrency. I think the one thing that I would add, and I'm sorry for monopolizing this, but is that blockchain and cryptocurrency are related, but they are not inextricable from one another, and there's inherent value in both. So looking at the blockchain as an enterprise solution, there's tremendous value in that. There are very difficult problems that the blockchain can solve or can make more quantifiable. And that is, to Paystan's comment, the inherent value in the blockchain for enterprise is high because they've had these risks that have been difficult to quantify and difficult to resolve in solutions. And that's what will drive this. And I think that if we push on blockchain, then we actually increase the adoption of cryptocurrency as well. Same thing, if we push on cryptocurrencies, we increase the adoption of the blockchain as well. These concepts are symbiotic, but they're not inextricable from one another.
Thank you. And that touches on kind of the next point I wanted to talk about, in particular with Paystan. There's often an argument, and I think it's not really an argument so much as an assumption that blockchain and cryptocurrencies are inextricable, partially because it helps to align incentives on decentralized kind of ledgers. But I think it's also interesting, especially as we have somebody from Ambrosius and Paystan to kind of contrast the approaches here and maybe discuss kind of the value at the enterprise level of something like using a distributed ledger that's decentralized and does rely on cryptocurrency for providing security, aligning incentives, versus a more permission chain, something like Hyperledger, or even something that's not necessarily a permission chain but doesn't rely on cryptocurrencies. And it would be interesting to get your opinions as to how that impacts the enterprise space and how you see them evolving, whether they have a relationship somewhat like intranet to the intranet, or if there's some other type of analogy that's maybe useful for people to be thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would actually agree with the point that when you push on blockchain, you do push on crypto, and vice versa. Our customers are not exposed in any way to crypto, but it does. Rising tide rises all boats together.
Exactly.
Right? And so what's fascinating for us is our customers when we're working with CFOs and we're working with the business team. We're producing business value, right? Which is higher degrees of security, higher degrees of auditability, higher degrees of automation. Lower costs when there's multiple stakeholders involved in the process, whether that's supply chain. We work with insurance a lot, right? Title. So in all of those cases, The value is created at the business layer and the application layer. But what happens is you increase the constituency of people who are now exposed to blockchain. So now we work with, let's say, the CTO, right, or the CIO's department actually implement the thing. And so now they have constituents in their side who are now exposed to blockchain technology. And when they get exposed to blockchain technology, it increases the curiosity, right, of everyone in the ecosystem. And that has a rippling effect. So I actually do think, even for companies like us that have what I would consider no direct crypto interaction from a product perspective, it actually directly relates and directly improves the overall in general.
I think crypto and blockchain will definitely go together, but I think blockchain will have other applications. You touched upon supply chain. I think financial technology is another one beyond crypto, where you'll start to see B2B transactions being done. The company in Fusion 7, we are not investors in it, but Mike driving that, and people, seasoned people getting into the space and driving efficiency and cost reduction, bringing more automation. That's just disruptive by nature. And I think if you start extrapolating the value, the intrinsic value of blockchain going into supply chain, manufacturing. Tomorrow if you walk into Walgreens and you can see a Tylenol and tell what supply chain process did it go through, what was the temperature control, etc., that's very useful, right? Walmart is already trying to implement, or at least experimenting with, how do you implement blockchain in their whole supply chain process as well as within the retail store environment. So I think you will definitely see several enterprise use cases of blockchain emerge beyond crypto, and that's where it starts to get more pervasive and become ubiquitous. Security is one application, but I think it's going to go to several industries one at a time.
I think the area where it has a potential to be, very interesting with blockchain and crypto are tied is in rethinking, open source, where, kind of in the initial version, you're part of the community, you have reputation in that community, and now, you have a very clear incentive mechanism beyond reputation to encourage network participants. And so I agree that there's going to be a set of technologies in the enterprise that are not going to have a token, are not going to have a crypto asset connected to a distributed ledger technology. But just like you have kind of open source and non-open source, I think there will be a parallel set that benefits from the marriage of those two.
One of the points which I fully agree is really the notion of what is the value that only fully distributed, decentralized models are bringing. And I think there's a lot of companies we talk with, they see blockchain as a solution to their data security problem, which is, finally a database that's secure. It's like, no, that's not exactly the point. So you see a lot of companies just wanting to put all their data on blockchain, including streaming of video cameras and stuff like that. And we hear that, and it's like, no, I think you're missing the point. But the second thing they say right after that, put all my data on blockchain, but it needs to stay private. So that's the second thing that we're driving with. Guys, I think you're missing the point. And I think one of the most important things we're trying to juggle with is really understand the fact that at least for years to come, companies will have some data that is entirely public, and they want to make that data public and trusted. They will always have way more data that is internal, and they don't want to share that with anyone. Those are the two extremes. And I think the most interesting, really, the nugget of the whole blockchain element is in between, where you want some data that is private but shared only with some trusted parties. So it's not entirely public, but you want to be able to share just some information about some of your products with a trade partner. And I think when you have two partners, business partners trying to, make profit from each other, let's put it that way. That's where it becomes really interesting, because you're able to digitalize that element of trust, and this is, I think, the really important element. And if you can work with every business company and get them to draw the line where this needs to be on blockchain, this needs to be public, this needs only to be shared, and this stays in your data center. There is no reason to put that in any decentralized ways whatsoever, and provide a solution that allows them to not only understand what's the benefit of putting in one or the other boxes, but also make it very easy for them to take data and shift it from a bucket to the other. Then you're achieving goal, I think.
And to your point, think about this, right? One of the largest drivers for the adoption of cryptocurrencies by virtue of adoption of blockchain solutions, right, is going to be the enterprise market segment. And they have been struggling for the last 7 to 10 years, right, with the transition from on-premise operations, right, wholly owned capital assets at their location, running their infrastructure, to cloud, right? And this is essentially the same problem, right? They are trying to figure out, they're trying to compartmentalize, right? What is highly proprietary and what is not, right? What do I need, what can I share operation of and what can I not share operation of? How can I defer capital asset cost for operations assets, right, for operational costs? How can I shift the price of addressing problem X, Y, and Z, addressing liability, addressing provenance, addressing distribution, addressing ownership and identity? How can I share the cost of these fundamental problems without necessarily preventing company proprietary trust, competitiveness, or without getting into trouble, right, around sharing information that they shouldn't, right? And so we're kind of at a second inflection on cloud with blockchain. It's, if you think about blockchain as a distributed verification mechanism for distributed execution, right, then that blockchain essentially is a service. Its platform is a service. It provides a provenance that I haven't had before, and it lowers the cost of operation for that provenance, right? And so enterprises, by adopting that, by figuring out how they compartmentalize their information, how they construct a solution that respects the compartmentalization that they want, right? How they share resources, right? With potential competitors or bad actors or people that don't have their best interest at heart, right? So that is like the second inflection of cloud. And blockchain as a service, right, is a very, very interesting kind of concept, right? But not from a I'm going to rent blockchain infrastructure kind of perspective. More that I need to think about what things are going to be public and what things are going to be private, what things I'm going to hold proprietary.
New skills as well.
Right? And it forces me to construct those solutions. And when enterprises figure this out, right, Paystan's going to be a multi-billion-dollar company, right? And people are going to flock to this market, and that will have a pull effect on cryptocurrencies as well.
So I think we're talking a lot about enterprise and the inherent value of the blockchain that I agree with. Sort of bringing it back to consumer and the value of the blockchain along with coins. I think given that we look at a lot of businesses, the prospect of coins as a means of solving the chicken and egg problem in marketplaces is intriguing, but currently coins are for speculation. That's how it's entered sort of the mass market, and that's how people think about it, which is problematic because once you have the abilities of the blockchain, plus the ability to add value to the marketplace. I think there was an education, sort of YouTuber skills that did an ICO with this idea, right? It's how you solve this. You can do this in financial technology, you can robos, marketplaces for manufacturing, etc. I can add a lot of value to all parties, but we haven't seen a lot of that.
Yeah, I want to comment on that a little bit too. We had a multi-billion-dollar free advertising campaign with mass media at the end of last year that popularized cryptocurrency in particular, based on the speculative frenzy that went on. And on the one hand, that's wonderful, because it's putting what we're doing into the minds of people. It's getting their interest and excitement. And so now I think it's really important for us to make it useful for people and for businesses and so on. So I would be interested in hearing some of you guys who are focused on the B2B side specifically, talk about how, and we've touched on this a little bit, but one of our hypotheses is that if you bring in the consumers or you make it very, very accessible to them, it's very, very useful to them, that they will largely drive adoption from B2C focusing enterprises, who then, then it sort of trickles into the other aspects of the business. And so I would be interested to hear that crossover this year. What's going to happen in 2018? How can the consumer side, with adoption of useful cryptocurrency, drive adoption across the enterprise?
I have a very simple example. That's something we're exploring a lot. Is if you start tying some form of cryptocurrency to the product you're buying, and you can essentially reward consumers for buying better product, that becomes something very, very powerful, because it's not just marketing loyalty where, hey, buy 5 get 6, it's not that kind of thing. But then you can say, okay, if you buy this water or if you buy this product, then you digitally create the opportunity for the end consumer not only to have a very simple reward program for doing good, and that's something that's very relevant for corporate social responsibility programs of big companies, the Nestle, the Danones, all those companies. They can start rewarding consumer for choosing better products, better for the environment and communities. And the second part, which I'm really excited about, is you can say, okay, well, there is some cryptocurrency attached to that. Part of it goes to you as a consumer, part of it goes back to the producer, goes back to the farmer who's made that, and then you can liquid proof digitally that yes, 5% of my revenue has actually gone to develop schools, to develop things. And I think this is a very, very powerful, because it's easy to say, yeah, we're giving away revenue. Where is the accountability? Where is the data? Where are the facts? Here you can digitalize that, and I think this is one of the most exciting things, where you solve several problems at once with one solution.
I think what will happen is, if you look at blockchain by itself, it actually plays very nicely into the demands of the enterprise today. And instead of just thinking from the blockchain angle, if you think from the enterprise angle, whether it's B2B or B2C, there is a whole wave of digitization that's going to happen with enterprises, and hence a plethora of data that's going to come out. But you want to be able to implement the right technology. The blockchain plays seamlessly into that. And number two, enterprises are being forced to create more trust with their customers, either end consumers or customers. And blockchain solves both of those problems very seamlessly. So I think that adoption is almost inevitable. The question becomes is which sector is more suited to adopt this first compared to some other sectors. And I personally feel, hey, supply chain, it fits in pretty nicely into it, and it's a B2B application as well. That's where you can bring actually costs down. Cost of a product can actually come down because of blockchain implementation. You look at how a company like Walmart pays their vendors today. There are contracts that are tied to, was this fish kept in this temperature range or not. And there's a whole set of companies that go out, collect that data. It's pretty manual. You could invoke the smart contracts part of blockchain and have that payment mechanism be automated, and hence not just bring automation but bring costs down as well. So it's almost a business driver for enterprises to start adopting blockchain versus saying, hey, it's a new buzzword.
On B2C also, I think there are some potential sectors. You think about financial services, right? And companies like Civic, where, hey, I have more control over my identity and how financial services use my identity and information. We all sign up for, we get a loan, we establish a relationship, and we get this, document from the bank that says, yes, we've shared your information with everybody, and check all these boxes and sign it and find a stamp and mail it back to us, and maybe in 3 months we'll stop all the mail that you're getting. The opportunity to kind of take back control of your identity and how it's used by third parties creates, I think, that B2B2C opportunity. Advertising, again, how our identity is being used, how our information is being used. Facebook makes a lot of money off of, our behavior, our identity, our information. Is there going to be a way to re-decentralize what happens online? And right now there's a lot of centralization that's happened over the last 5-10 years, and So from a B2B to C perspective, I think decentralization is a powerful potential theme.
It's incredible, I mean, the amount of questions, even this conversation in the last 5 minutes has raised for me, thinking about something where a public company, offers coins to customers, what does that do to them in the public markets? Like, how does that affect their market cap? What does that do to shareholders? And this goes back to the regulatory questions and how quickly companies will want to adopt that model where, it's intriguing to want to create more value for the customer and build a brand and sort of have it be ready. But, what do you do there? And even at the seed stage, right? It's, folks are coming to us for equity, or they could raise $50 million through an ICO.
Yeah, this is a super important question, I think. It's the question of ownership. Traditionally we've had centralized companies. Shareholders own the company. Those companies have proprietary systems. They protect those with patents and other ways. And now there's this new capability that we have, and that is to distribute ownership not just via equity and public markets, but have a different type of ownership of the entire system, all the business processes, and the value that's created inside of that infrastructure. So, one of the things that established companies may find themselves facing is that they're up against competitors in some segments who now have this additional tool, and it's a very powerful tool because if you can somehow reward participation in any kind of ecosystem, so if it were a Facebook, for example, that is very sticky. You can get a lot more share of that consumer's attention and social networking, or their wallet share, or what have you. And this is a major competitive advantage. I think that publicly traded companies and other established companies will have some difficult questions to answer. They are going to be very concerned about the regulatory, aspects of this, but they also probably better start thinking about how to incorporate some of this distributed ownership pretty quickly, or they may find themselves at a competitive disadvantage.
Yeah. So maybe one of the things I think it's fascinating right now is there's actually two poles in the called token economics of the enterprise, the business. Right now you have one side which is really early stage capital happening in the ICOs, and in some ways I actually don't think that that's the best place for capital to go, because early stage companies are so nascent, they're so early. It's actually where venture capital is quite useful, right? You have companies that are specifically designed to help launch a business, right? Particularly for young startups. And then we see them in the news all the time, these companies where they add blockchain at the end of their name and their public company and their market cap for them, and that's crazy too, right? What I think will be fascinating in the market, and we haven't really seen much of this yet, is what is an established company that's a high growth company that is actually re-looking at the economics and the value creation that they distribute. So it's not some scheme. They're not just trying to raise money because it's easier than going to Sand Hill Road, right? But it's an established business who fundamentally understands how blockchain works and wants to think about the distribution of ownership in a different way, right? And I think that's the class of companies that are just now getting built. Those companies have to actually scale and get somewhere first.
Yeah, I'm curious because underpinning kind of all of these thoughts here are kind of the notion that for the consumers to actually be able to kind of leverage these, they need to be able to use the tools effectively and feel safe. And this kind of goes to Mike's point earlier, where right now we are at a somewhat kind of inflection point, it seems, where a lot of the tools are being built. Things like Civic are actually usable for end users. At the same time, we see that there's a lot of difficulty for people that haven't been engaged in the space for a while. And so I'm just curious, what are you guys saying, or what needs to be done at the enterprise or the business level to make these not just accessible to consumers, but put the tools in a place such that they can actually have this growth and people can actually adopt them? Because in order for this to really happen, we need mass adoption, and that's going to require people that don't have as many of the technical skills that a lot of the early blockchain community members have. So I think Civic has a pretty good UI, UX experience. It's limited, but it's incredible for what it does. And so I'm curious for some of the kind of more encompassing projects, what do they need to start working towards so that people can actually use them, and you haven't been involved for 4 years in the space.
This is not a flashy answer at all, and it doesn't have much hype to it, but we have to provide better products and services that are, across many metrics better than what exists right now. And so in some cases, blockchain can enable that. But I think that, to Jorge's point earlier, it's not just about the name blockchain, it's about actually servicing businesses and people's needs better. So for us, in particular, what that's meant is looking at existing dominant payment systems and saying, how can we perform faster, cheaper, and an overall better experience for all parties who are participating in this payment network? And if we can do that, then that's something worthwhile doing.
So this makes me think of traditional fintech, right? Where up to a certain point, let's call it Plaid, right? It was very difficult to build a fintech company, so it was easier it was more novel to find investments. Post Plaid, you begin to see a lot of the same kinds of startups develop. What happened with Robo, right? Where all of a sudden everyone wanted to build a Robo business. It became very difficult to find funding because you needed to scale significantly because Plaid enabled that. So it's finding someone that serves as the Plaid for blockchain that enabled a lot of folks to, build something a lot faster than it could before. That may end up hindering the level of competitiveness, sort of how we have seen with Robo, but I feel like that would be a good problem to have because then you can expect sort of mass market adoption for blockchain, which would expand the market significantly and people would see the value. So it would be difficult for the startups that sort of come after it, but it would be good for the sector as a whole.
I think
Sorry, adding on to your point on just making better products, that's kind of what, to succeed in the consumer market, you have to build a product that's far easier to use and doesn't sort of have the hoops and they have to go through, right? So even something as simple as just accepting tokens, right? Now you have to generate a private public key pair, where they're going to store that, kind of making that process seamless is not as trivial as just, it is maybe saying like, if you have developers interacting with your UI, right? So that's something that we certainly think through a lot. And I guess I'm somewhat of a contrarian to some of what's been said in that I think decoupling of the blockchain and this idea of having a native asset that's trainable within that blockchain is actually very fundamental to what interested me in the space. The ability to decentralize trust is sort of why I got interested in this. So for example, one of the issues that I faced with my old startup was like, we'd say pay for ads and that we would get a lot less than what we paid for, okay? That's not cool, right? So, having something like blockchain where it maps better too because it's a digital asset, it's just ad inventory, which is digital ad inventory, and mapping that to the blockchain I think even maps a little bit better than say tracking physical assets in the world. Just because it's on the blockchain doesn't mean it's true, right? So thinking through those implications as well is something that, I don't know, sort of excites me about the space.
Just from that point though, so you said decentralizing trust, trust is based on identity, right? So having it, whether or not I trust a party is going to be based on what comes out of the party and who the party is. Understanding who the party is at a fundamental level is a big issue. And to your point about users interacting with cryptocurrencies, for example, or blockchain, and having to create private key pairs, right? That's the point. That's the injection point that causes massive problems, right? That generation of that private key pair, the protection of that private key pair, key management, the ability to present that key in a way that is secure, the ability to use that key in a way that is secure, that is the root of identity. And we still have problems in that space. And in fact, that's the reason that and secure execution are the reasons that we've had things like Mt. Gox, right? That we've had things like somebody on a Japanese exchange buying Bitcoin at $0, right? The ability to eliminate key portions of a solution because you can disable JavaScript or you can infiltrate local key storage. Those are major issues, and those are destabilizing issues around cryptocurrency. I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying that there are different areas of the solution space for blockchain and cryptocurrency that have different levels of maturity and have different risk profiles. And for cryptocurrency, identity is still a major risk area because identity is proven by presentation of keys, right? And storage of those keys, generation of those keys, that is still an issue. And it's unfortunate because it's been an issue for 40 years, right? But it still is an issue.
There was a comment about making better product, and I think, better comes in different flavors, and I think one of the really interesting ways to think about blockchain is as this fundamental new architecture. And when you have new architectures, you could do things in this new architecture that just wasn't possible in the old architecture. So it's not just a better, in a sense, slicker or easier to use version of what you had, but just being able to do things that you couldn't do before. And as one example that maybe also kind of shows how blockchain's been used in social issues, when the referendum in Spain went off, the government basically went to all the websites and took down the results of that referendum because it was not in their interest. And so people used the Filecoin protocol instead of the HTTP protocol to relaunch those web pages. So the experience is not that you had a better web page, it's that you fundamentally couldn't get to that information in the old way of doing things, and now you could. And so I think the biggest companies and the most transformative opportunities will be where people think about what can you fundamentally do with this as a new architecture versus a better version of something that exists.
Right. Just the desire to put things into boxes that already exist is like so tempting, right? And that's kind of what I always feel like, oh, you're missing the point on some of these like kind of big ideas that don't necessarily fit into our existing frameworks of logic or kind of products that, oh, like this, we're the Airbnb for X or whatever. So yeah, for me, just to think about how can we take, say, something that's like advertising and putting it into a smart contract where it is auditable and then you can have this decentralized trust. Makes a lot of sense. And then having an interface for the consumers that is seamless to where they can earn cryptocurrency. So one of the things that we talk about is like, can we be one of the leading or sort of the first ways that our users interact with cryptocurrency, right? So every media consumption is effectively ubiquitous. Can we be the onboarding ramp that allows people to, have their first wallet or whatever that might be?
Thank you guys so much. We actually have a second panel. We run over slightly, but really appreciate the insights. Again, thank you for being here today, and I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk later on.
Thank you, colleagues. The panel, I would like to ask to stay for a little bit longer. We're going to showcase a few of our portfolio companies. Some of those are here, and some of those are going to be presenting by video. It's going to be a little bit tricky for you guys to watch the ones that you're doing remote. Our first company is a startup from Germany, and these are companies out of our enterprise and consumer portfolio. We try to pick all of those in the blockchain and crypto area, but some of them might not be a perfect match, but they are definitely out of the enterprise and the consumer space. The first company is Slockit, and Stefan from Germany is going to present it remotely.
Is entering cyberspace and interacting with digital entities. We think it's actually going to be using physical objects, autonomous objects. Now, blockchain, as Joseph just explained, brings transformation to fields that may not be as, let's say, sexy as VR headsets. But these verticals form the backbone of our connected digital society. So what we're trying to achieve at Slockit is marrying the physical and the digital. And the way we do this is obviously using blockchain. So the blockchain is this series of smart contracts, of autonomous digital entities. They can talk to each other, they can transact with each other, they can send money to each other. And because they're based on the blockchain, they benefit from all of its properties. Immutability, meaning that a third party cannot arbitrarily change a smart contract on the blockchain. They cannot go in there and change the data that's in the database, if you will. It's there forever. It's therefore corruption-proof, and it's resistant to collusion because it's based on a network formed around the principle of consensus scale. And it benefits from cryptographic security by design because Ethereum was built on public and private key infrastructure. And finally, this is, by the way, quite amazing. These are applications that have zero downtime. So the decentralized app that we just learned about, they never go down. And that's because they operate on a network that's formed of thousands of nodes and eventually millions. And even if you were down to 2 players, they would still function. And they also give access to a user to something that I call zero sign-on. And we'll get to that in a second. So what we're trying to achieve is really marrying the blockchain, and our space by establishing a one-to-one relationship between objects and their digital counterparts that have unique identifier. And it's these digital identifiers that we use to make that relationship. And effectively what we're doing is we're giving objects an identity, and we're giving objects all the properties from the blockchain. They inherit it, so security, immutability, etc. That's all part of the object now. And of course we're giving the objects the ability to run code. So think about that, objects that can run code. Objects that are fully autonomous, objects that can actually own themselves. Let's take the use case. So we have a user, Bob, and typical use case is looking for a house to rent. So what he does, grabs his cell phone, loads up a decentralized application, and this is the zero sign-on I was talking about. He broadcasts a unique digital identifier that represents him on the network, just like the smart contracts have a digital identifier. He broadcasts it, and therefore the application knows who he is, because only the person who holds the private key, so matching this public key, can sign these transactions. So the network for sure knows that it's him. He doesn't have to register, he doesn't have to sign on. Another advantage of decentralized applications over the web. He finds the house, he loves it, of course. Now, the phone is going to connect, I should say the application is going to read the blockchain, identify which contract, which represents the door for that house, and sends it a transaction. It sends it money. It sends money to the door. And if you were to look inside that smart contract, what you'll find is it's really a row in a database, right? Smart contracts are fancy Excel spreadsheets with macros attached. And if you were to look in there, you get this row, and you have the
So that's actually the problem, right? Not the AV, but the marrying of the unique ID, right, and the keys that are associated with that unique ID to all of the digital assets, all of the digital entities, right? So that key management problem, I mean, the conversation from Ledger yesterday, how many of you guys have Ledger or Treasure devices? Okay, everybody else, you're running around naked. Seriously. How many of you have hot and cold wallets? Okay, so if you don't know the difference between a hot and a cold wallet, then you shouldn't have cryptocurrency. Right? It's fundamentally dangerous. The value of that private key that secures your crypto asset is incrementally increasing over time. The more cryptocurrency that you have, the more types of currency that you have, the more assets that you have that are identified cryptographically, the more valuable that key is. And at some point, there will be a break once, run everywhere type of attack, right? That leads to, for example, if you're doing storage on an individual machine and you're connecting it up to the internet, you're just begging to be completely owned. So get used to the notion of a hot wallet and a cold wallet. Keep some of your assets in a hot wallet, keep some of your assets in a cold wallet. Look into key management and understand the notion of having a device that is storing your key, right? A hardware security module, something like a ledger or a treasury, right? So you need to have those types of infrastructure personally, because the onus is on the consumer, right? You didn't manage your keys? Oh, so sorry, right? You just lost 10,000 Bitcoin. Sorry about that.
All right, thanks. I think we'll continue with the next company, the video quality. We had some issues there, so I think we're moving on to Jeff, and he's working with Bitly Create. Let's see if we get this a little bit better this time.
I'm the CEO of Bitly. Is a blockchain-powered online educational platform with tech talent acquisition and token scholarships. BDG Token will connect students, instructors, and employers in an equally beneficial way. We believe that education has to be accessible for everyone. Our vision is to connect learners who want to study, instructors who can teach, and employers who want to hire tech talent. And for the transparency of platform, decentralization is a must. A user base of 29 million, an MVP, and a world-class advisors will be giving an opportunity for students to earn while they learn. Success of a Hostinger, a company behind the world's biggest free web hosting brand, assembled a bidding core team that is building an educational change. It's gonna be beautiful and it's gonna be huge.
Current education system is caught in the past. The internet, one of its special characteristics is that it can reach millions of people in ways that speak directly to them and give them an education that they really need and can use. That's what the degree is pursuing. That's what they're going to pursue, is a way of reaching millions of people with material that they need in order to succeed. It's a new world, and I think that all the elements are there to allow them to really make a difference in the world.
For the very first time, you have a system, the possibility of earning while you learn and earning while you teach others. So this just changes everything. That blockchain allows is the co-creation of value. So the more that the community contributes, then the more valuable everything becomes. So this is a virtual cycle.
Yeah, if you guys want to give any feedback, I will.
You want to cancel? It's going to start out.
I mean, very cool offices. I think that was very nice. Although there was a logo of another company in the back, if you look carefully. But honestly, I'm really excited about the opportunities of applying blockchain to learning. I think like the doors it open and the democratization of that is super interesting as a use case. I think my key question around that, or most important thing, is where is the money flowing into the system? I think this is for me the only one big question. And if you want to see Coca-Cola ads in your things, that one way of entering money, maybe not. But I think there are so many opportunities.
I think hiring, the money will come from on the hiring side, because instead of giving my resume, I can just share here's my private blockchain that has the list of projects I've done, schools I went to, what I learned, and validated by experts or people who were involved. So that brings trust.
Yeah.
right? So hiring managers or companies that are looking to hire people, they will probably pay for that trust. Today you look at a resume, what are you going to do? Ask for degrees and all that.
And having a system that is able to literally on the fly as you go.
Yeah, I should just walk into an interview and share my private blockchain. Hey, here.
I think that's fired as a side effect of learning, which is very
Yeah. So learning by itself may not make the money, and actually the way I understood his pitch, I think he's also connecting learners to instructors. So he's going to become that platform, and I'm guessing somewhere there he'll take a cut of that also. But I think the big money comes. This is almost like tutor.com, but more at a bigger level. I think not just high school tutoring, but I think the big money is going to come from on the recruiting side.
All right, thank you. Pavel will share that feedback with Jeff. I'm not sure if Daniel from the Brune Experience is here. He would be next. Doesn't look like. The next company would be Blockable. Anjali, are you here? So we go to Joel from Poder.io. Joel, please come forward.
Hi, good morning, how are you? My name is Joel. I was supposed to pitching on the artificial intelligence segment, but it's fine. We are based in Miami. We are an AI-born artificial intelligence platform. And we developed our platform in 2016, and in 2017 we sold $2 million in revenue, and we are projecting 5 times growth of revenue for this year, to 10 million. We are focused on hyper-personalizing messages, like websites, email marketing, programmatic media campaigns. So big agencies like IPG, OMD are huge partners of us. And then what we're doing is we are predicting on a one-to-one basis, a one-to-one level behaviors, predicting sales demands. So we actually bring the power that Facebook or Google have of understanding a 360-degree vision of a single persona. Like Facebook has knows from each user interests, demographics, and behaviors, but we do that for regular traditional businesses. So now, in the Internet of Everything era, that subdivides in things and people, our core now is people, right? So we have clients like MasterCard, Unilever, starting with Pepsi, Millicom, which is like AT&T or T-Mobile in South Africa and Latin America. So we have identified that one of the ways to grow exponentially is to launching the blockchain infrastructure. We are very strong in the B2B side, but we think that by launching a B2C strategy where we can integrate with data marketplaces like Everything, IOTA, that we, for example, have been talking over the last 3 months with all of the owners or founders, we could leverage and explode exponentially the whole predictions marketplace. How? Very simple. We, let's say we go to a B2C market, we go to IOTA, we identify a user that we're interested in buying that data, we pay them with our Epica tokens for that data, we repackage that data adding the prediction component, and we sell in our current existing $10 million market of predictions that we're currently selling. And if somebody buys those predictions, we go back to that original data owner, and we double reward him with tokens. Why? Based on the value of his data, right? So it's a very simple model that would definitely leverage and explode our revenue. So how is our concept, how is our model? On the B2B side, we have a hybrid between state and spend model. where current clients, these 10 millions are coming from actually on our marketplace from 100 clients that are paying 100K tickets per year. So those are 12-month contracts that they're paying on a monthly basis. And what we're doing is that basically once they sign a contract, we provide tokens in their platform. In the AI world, if you have different levels of access on an AI platform depending on the money you spend as a price tiers model. So by staking X amount of dollars in our platform, they will have X amount of accesses in our platform. So when time goes by, they're going to be reducing their levels of access. So that's the way on the B2B of how we create value. Okay, on the B2C side, to finish, there are 3 ways we're creating value to the token. One is we're paying them in token for their data. 2, they are speculating on the token. But 3, as let's say American Express does today, that they give you some benefits or discounts for having an account with them. On the next generation of discounts and benefits, as you were recently saying, is that based on all of this data that I have on the B2C side, we're going to know a lot and customize and personalize, hyper-personalize specific discounts or messages. So, thank you very much.
You guys are sort of embodying some of the things that the panel was just talking about. So you've got a traditional a business that you're now adding a blockchain component to. Another thing is that you're doing is you've been kind of taking data about consumers, using AI to predict future behavior, and then selling that, on the back end to companies. The second piece that you're doing that we spoke of is you're kind of going the B2C route. You are giving some of the ownership of that data to the actual users, which is kind of cool. So it's sort of like, it seems like you're morphing from one species slightly into the next in the ways that we were just talking about.
Yeah, that's great. One of the examples to finish that area, we said, yeah, we are definitely working with that first-party data. We are enriching. We're already have 8 months of integration with guys like Oracle or IBM, and so we empower that first-party data. We are enriching it with third-party. We have created already a private second-party marketplace for Unilever or MasterCard or etc. to interchange not only data but predictions from each of their data. And one of the cool things is that one example, for example, Millicom is a telecom company. Okay, I didn't mention our 3 verticals are CPG, telecom, and retail. Millicom now is having with us access to all the anonymous behaviors of users that are interacting with their digital properties in an anonymous way that belong to competitors, carriers, and then for them to position their competitive advantages on a one-to-one level. And on top of that, we can enrich with third-party behaviors, like he would be likely to be interested in travel to a World Cup in Russia. So it's completely hyper-personalized and different methodologies that we're using. On the D2C side or on the smart city blockchain part component, let's say we do agreements with the government of Mexico and IOTA signed a deal with the government of Taiwan. We go to our market, we buy with the tokens and this data from Taiwan. We create predictions on the data of Taiwan, and then we apply it to the first-party data of the government of Mexico. And that's the way how we are playing or moving right now.
Have you had, so central to AI is the quality of the model and the availability of the data, right? Yeah. Your data solution is to buy data, right? Essentially in a consignment through your tokens, right? So have you had situations where a data provider, like say the government of Taiwan, put restrictions on the data that caused fundamental issues with your model?
Got it. Okay, so in terms of privacy and regulations and all of that, we are right now in a transition. Remember, we're very new. We are in a transition to comply with everything on the GDPR. That's where the stage we are right now. We finished our private first stage of angels, 1.5 million. We are raising now on a $40 million valuation. We are raising 5 million, and then that's between now and July, and then in September we're planning to launch our token of a $20 million. So we are, on your end, we haven't yet bought any data from the government of Taiwan. We know and understand all the ecosystem right now, and we have been growing and working specifically on the fiat one, and we are basically launching our token very soon.
Well, I guess the point that I would make is that I think that you're going to have massive problems complying with GDPR on hyper-personalization of an aggregated model based on data that you purchased from other players that may have restrictions on what you can actually, the interpretations that you can extract out of that data, right? And so the second thing that I would say is that as you grow, right, these problems are going to be amplified, and it's going to cause you to rework your model. So I don't know what work has gone into the AI model, how large the initial training set was, and so on and so forth. But that directly affects the value of your observations out of the data. So the availability of data and the accuracy of the model, right? Those are going to be big sticking points for you.
Yeah. So definitely there are big challenges that we know and we have identified, but we will definitely make sure that we go up to different levels of compliance. Definitely it's a big space that it's crossing aboard different industries, and we will definitely, that's a limitation and something that we are considering, but although it's a complex model, we believe there's still a huge potential of marketplace on a compliant side that we could leverage.
Are you doing anything for medical?
Not yet, but we could definitely work something on.
I think one thing maybe that would be helpful for everyone, because you are a really interesting case study, right? And going from a startup that's kind of right in the middle, crossing the chasm, to now moving into token economics, is classic theory would say, as a startup, you can only be good at one thing and one thing well, right? You can't shotgun it. You're like got a crossbow, right? You got one. So how do you think of the fact that you've gotten your business to the stage it's at now, but you have a major transition, right? Both operationally, from a product perspective. How do you think about that transition at a pretty critical stage in your company?
That's cool. So we have identified that there are two ways of growing exponentially, with or without the blockchain era, right? So if this boom or disruption wouldn't have occurred, we would have taken, and we are taking the route of how Facebook did, for example, for you to, when they did partnership with Spotify, to log in with Spotify using a account. So these type of partnerships, we are now partnering with Shopify, Magento, and Vitex. So in one simple word, we could leverage 300,000 clients, and that's one way of traditionally grow, right, on a fast way. So that's why, for example, we're doing our Series A round from now to June, independently of how it works on the token side. So we're not depending on the tokenization of our model. We are just thinking that there's a huge space growing with data marketplaces and a prediction market coming up.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Checking to see if Ram from SyncFab is in the audience. I haven't seen him, so we'll move to our last remote presentation, and I think after that we'll have a few minutes actually for some questions from the audience.
Retail businesses worldwide, and yet there are vast shops for local offers, and we help Joe and co-founder of Sidekicks Hi everyone, my name is Miron. I'm CEO and co-founder of Sidekicks. And we are a marketplace for local offers, and we help drive foot traffic into local physical brick and mortar shops. And we focus on the market of very small micro businesses, 1 to 20 employees. And we are there because they represent 95% of retail businesses worldwide, and yet they are vastly underserved when it comes to digital advertising capabilities. So we think that there is a very large market here and a huge opportunity to tap into this market. And what these micro businesses know how to do very well is to create a great in-store shopping experience for their customers. They also know how to put up a sale sign in the front window to target people who are walking down the street and get some foot traffic that way. Now, it used to be that in order to scale this up, they used to advertise in the local paper. But these papers are now shutting down, so that avenue is closing. So when they're trying to move to the digital world, they realize that it's just too complicated and time-consuming for them because they're small businesses, they're very lean and very busy. And they view digital advertising as risky, and they don't really see the return on investment because even if they ran a successful campaign, eventually they can't really connect the campaign with the person that walked into their store right now. Now, special offers and coupons have always been a great way to drive foot traffic into businesses. And with the advent of smartphones, the mobile coupon market is growing rapidly, both in size and in redemption rates. At the same time, it's still a highly fragmented market with very, very high margins. So we are helping these micro businesses cross over into the digital world with a very simple mobile-first intuitive platform that enables them to create and publish local offers and then to redeem and measure the effectiveness of those offers. So essentially we enable them to generate what we call micro campaigns, and they can do that very quickly. In under 2 minutes, they can generate a campaign and start to drive foot traffic in through the door and instantly track the results. So they can really see the impact that their advertising work is having on their bottom line. And we are now democratizing our platform on the blockchain and create a marketplace for local offers that will be based on our Kicks token. And this blockchain-based marketplace will provide complete transparency so that publishers can select the right kind of offers to promote to their audiences from a very wide range of offers. And they will know when they are compensated, they were compensated accurately, again, because the platform is transparent. So this is a peer-to-peer connection that eliminates platform fees and helps publishers get essentially paid more, while the merchants spend less and also reach a wider audience. So essentially, this marketplace enables a token-based loyalty scheme in which very small local merchants can easily participate and get the same kind of advantages that the larger players have today. So thank you so much for your time. We are Sidekicks, and I would be happy to answer any questions or comments you might have.
And any feedback from the panel, or? Oh, brilliant, that's wonderful. All right, we'll move on. Our next presenter is going to be here, will be Paper AI, I think. Sorry, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Shaukat Kabara, and I'm the founder and CEO of Paper.ai. So it's Paper without the E, and we're building a collaboration app for communities. Starting with developer communities, and the way that we define communities, it's a group of people that are working on a specific cause that they're passionate about. So an example within the developer space would be like the open source blockchain communities who are collaborating together to build great software. Other examples are communities that like developer API communities nonprofits, or even freelancer communities. And basically, the core problem that we want to solve for is if you look at these communities, they're usually collaborating in different locations. By design, they're not physically in the same location or space, which means that they're meeting, but they're also meeting virtually on Zoom, on GoToMeeting. And what they normally do is they take like the entire video and they share it on YouTube, and you have people that want to chime in on important design discussion, but they have to look at the entire video, which is problematic. So what we've built is Paper. It's an assistant like Alexa that can join your meetings, and you can use voice commands to capture important audio snippets from a meeting that you can share or take action on. That's kind of what we have. We have a private beta, and we have customers using it on a daily basis in all of their meetings. In addition, we have mobile apps. So think of Facebook, where communities can come and create a workspace, can have channels or projects like Slack, but also then they're able to kind of view a news feed of posts from content that comes from meetings or from our mobile apps using video and audio. So that's kind of what we do. The way that we're using blockchain 3 ways. One is on security. When we think of communities collaborating, we believe that these communities collaborate across companies. So there's a lot of examples where we have freelancers or consultants or developers or contributors with an open source, and you want to make sure that you're collaborating across companies or even partners, and it's extremely important to keep some of the content shared secure. So that's kind of one piece. So security is one. The second one is on identity. We've got feedback from some of our customers that they want to be able to vote for community decisions, so voting and identity is important. And the third piece is around payment to contributors or freelancers or developers. So within our network, communities need to get work done. They put their tasks, they want to buy our coins to be able to make payments to work done. We have a super strong team. My background, I worked at Facebook and I worked on the search experience at Facebook, worked on Microsoft. My other co-founder was the head of the Amazon App Store developer marketing team, worked in Alexa. And the third person worked at Intel and Microsoft doing voice and speech AI.
Why do you need a native currency?
That's what I was wondering.
Sorry.
So basically, why do you need like your own currency? Like Ether is a fairly ubiquitous currency at this point, or especially in the developer community, or Bitcoin, or.
Got it. At this stage, we're thinking about kind of both of these options. We haven't made a decision whether we want to build our own currency or just allow something like Ether or Bitcoin.
I think it helps you if you can really look at, hey, I need to tokenize and also create the value at more proprietary value rather than something to probably think about.
Okay.
Maybe less on the blockchain side. I mean, two very good integrations I could think of. It's like first Skype and second, or any voice chat teams, and second Asana. Because I can totally see that every time I talk to my teams and I assign tasks, and sometimes they disappear somewhere and they don't get done. Like every time I talk to an agency or someone, if I could just have those tasks created, that would be amazing. And just that on its own would be a solution, by with or without the tokenizing.
Got it. Yeah, we already have integrations with Skype, with Zoom, because we dial in using the phone number and passcode, so we're ubiquitous.
Yeah.
We've integrated with Jira.
Yeah.
We want to integrate with Asana and other task management solutions as well.
Because like if you can just create tasks and things with the deadline and the grammar kind of assignments aren't that hey, add that to the for next week and stuff, that would be really
cool. Awesome.
Yeah, I guess my feedback would be your core value, right, is identifying these individual snippets of information, right? Increasing the signal to noise ratio, if you will, right?
Correct.
So thinking about, do you actually need to create an entire platform for that, or can you do it through a partner extension kind of model, right? In addition to thinking about, do you need your own currency, right? Because I think both of those answers, I mean, as a developer, you already have your tool set pretty much set, right? You're going to be a Slack user, you're going to be a Jira user, you're going to be, using Asana, for example, if you're an enterprise developer. So, these types of tool sets they're large already. People have already made choices about them. You have to infiltrate those through a partnership model. And I think that adding your own currency kind of component to this just increases your complexity exponentially. It doesn't add a lot of value.
All right, great. Thank you. And thank you, panel. We are going to take a short break and we'll resume the session of Internet of Things, IoT, and blockchain at 10:45. Thank you.
Super good.